Welcome to the 5-7 podcast. I'm your host, Pri, and today we are going to be talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her new Green Deal. Well, it's not exactly her deal because there was a form of this beforehand, but she's a very big supporter of it, and we're gonna talk about her, where she came from. We're gonna talk about the Green New Deal, and I'm gonna give some statistics on pollution. So here we go. I got all of my sources from NPR, Fox News, Forbes, SierraClub.org, and BBC News World Asia. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was born October 13th, 1989, in New York, the Bronx. She's the child of a Puerto Rican mother and father. She went to college at Boston University and graduated with an economics and international relations degree. She worked for Ted Kennedy for a while and then moved back home to help her family. She became a waitress to make ends meet. She was pretty much waiting tables and bartending. And I believe she was actually still bartending while she was running against Joe Crowley. She worked as an organizer for Bernie Sanders in 2016, and then in 2018, she ran her own campaign to unseat Congressman Joe Crowley. He was a 10-term congressman from the 7th district and the 14th district, and he was practically like the fourth guy from the top. It was a huge deal that she won. He didn't think that she stood a chance. They were actually supposed to have a debate, and he didn't even bother to show up. He said that he was out of town at the time, but people were able to find tweets that placed him in New York on the day that the debate was supposed to take place. So yeah, he completely underestimated her, and he was pretty upset after he lost. And then she went on to win the general election in dramatic fashion. I mean, she absolutely annihilated her opponent, and she became the youngest person female in Congress right now at 29 years old. She's, I believe, the first female millennial to be elected into Congress. It's truly remarkable. You know, she didn't have a lot of money. She was able to raise some money, but she was actually saving it behind the bar, I think, in a bag while she was bartending, believe it or not. So it goes to show you not to underestimate your enemy or who you're running against, because you just never know. She had a solid campaign, and obviously she won. As of recently, her and during the course of the podcast, I'll probably relate to her as AOC or Alexandria. And so AOC and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts currently right now are pushing back against a plan by House Democrats, campaign arm to block progressive challengers from running against incumbents in party primary elections. Both of these women ousted members of their own party, criticized and recently disclosed policy by the Democratic National Campaign Committee, the DCCC, to blacklist political firms that agree to work against sitting members of Congress, calling the policy harmful to the party. And I'll tell you what, it's absolutely unbelievable, because the Democratic Party, they're always trying to find a way to keep their own people in power. The DCC's new rule to blacklist and boycott anyone who does business with primary challengers is extremely divisive and harmful to the party, Ocasio-Cortez tweeted. The AOC and fellow progressive challengers have campaigned to upend system of politics with big corporate ties. Joe Crowley, before his defeat, was considered a possible successor to then House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. He now has a lucrative job as a corporate lobbyist, completely proving AOC's point that these people, these congressmen or politicians, what they're doing is they get into power and then they get out and then they lobby because they have some of these corporate interests in mind while they're in power, which is which isn't what you're supposed to be doing, because you're not supposed to be having corporate interest in mind while you're doing your job. You're supposed to have the American people in mind. And clearly, they're not doing that. So what they're trying to do is, what the DCCC is trying to do is tell these firms, these political firms, like, you are going to be blacklisted from working with us if you support anybody who tries to run against our incumbents. And it's brutal. The DCC stated that their mission is keeping to the party's newly won majority in the House by electing House Democrats, which includes supporting and protecting incumbents. So by protecting incumbents, they're saying that they're going to blacklist anybody who doesn't support their incumbents. In other words, keeping these people in power for, an indefinite amount of time is pretty much what they want. AOC has most famously been a supporter of the Green New Deal. And here's what the New Deal is set to achieve. Millions of family-sustaining jobs, whether replacing lead pipes, weatherizing homes, expanding railways, or manufacturing wind turbines. Millions of workers will lead the transition to a new economy. The jobs created must be high-road union jobs with family-sustaining wages and benefits, safe working conditions, and training and advancement opportunities. Climate sanity. A Green New Deal would help us swiftly transition to a clean. You know what? I'm going to go back. And I'm going to talk about this really quick, about the millions of family sustaining jobs. And we all want this. We all want. I want everybody to be successful. I want everybody to get up in the morning and have purpose and go do a job, and at the end of the day of their job, know that what they did during their 8-hour or 9-hour or 10-hour shift is enough money to put food on the table and to live a somewhat comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable lifestyle, but a lifestyle where you're not pinching pennies, every single day, or having to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. Everybody wants that, and I want that for everybody. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case. We have some people that are working 3 jobs just trying to make ends meet. And you can blame many things, lack of education, lack of mentorship from family members or just mentors in general. You can blame it on inflation, on having to try to live in certain parts of the United States. The cost of living in San Francisco and in New York is absolutely through the roof. It's unbelievable, and you can't expect anybody to live in those areas that aren't making decent means. So yeah, everybody wants that, but how is that going to happen? How can we do that? How can we create these jobs? Replacing lead pipes. That should be done anyways. Weatherizing homes. I get it. You can save money by paying less in your utilities, but shouldn't that also be upon like the homeowner or the person who's living there? Like, what does the government have to do with that? I don't think the government should have anything to do with weatherizing your homes. And yeah, sure, I know that they want to create new jobs, but where's the money going to come from, to pay from these people? Are they going to have to tax the American people more to create these new jobs? There's nothing solid that says that there's a plan on how to do this. Moving on. Climate sanity. A Green New Deal would help us swiftly transition to a clean energy economy by investing in smart grids for renewable energy distribution, encouraging energy-efficient manufacturing, and expanding low-emissions public transit. A Green New Deal would significantly reduce climate pollution. Now, yeah, this is. It's a great idea. We want to cut down on our emissions footprints on the world. Because we live here. It's our planet, and we need to take care of our planet. But once again, there's nothing here that says how they're going to do this. And as you really think about it, shouldn't the government be doing this anyways? As looking for ways to upgrade and maybe make our power grid more efficient. Maybe shouldn't there be, like somebody shouldn't the Department of Energy be managing something like that? I don't know. We should probably look into that and see exactly what the Department of Energy is actually doing. Moving on, clean air and water. A Green New Deal would replace lead pipes, clean up hazardous waste sites, and reduce toxic air and water pollution from oil, gas, and coal. Those benefiting the most would be the communities of color and low-income families who today endure disproportionate exposure to toxins. Well, which is incredibly unfortunate. Kind of like in Flint, Michigan, how they were dealing with unbelievably high levels of lead in their water. These things shouldn't happen. And once again, should that be considered a government problem, or should that be more of a local government problem, say at the state level? Like, shouldn't the state be managing things like that? That is something to take into consideration. Lower cost. A Green New Deal would help working class families slash their energy bills and reduce their transit costs by offering more energy efficient homes, access to affordable wind and solar power, and more reliable options for affordable public transportation. I don't see that happening as of right now. I think that there's way too much money in oil, and there's too many powerful people in the oil business and the natural gas business that are just going to let that money go. Unfortunately, it's more of a corruption issue than, say, maybe a federal government not doing the right thing kind of a deal. But I'm sure that they have a hand in it too. Let me see. Community resilience. Hold on a second. Let me look at this one more time. I'm sorry. Solar power. Yeah, I love solar power. It should work. And actually, solar power is becoming much more affordable these days. I believe that there's a lot more companies popping up that are allowing you to put solar panels on your roof. And what they do is they put the solar panels on your roof, and then I think they put a battery. At least in Tesla's case, they keep like a battery in your garage, and I believe that power can sustain you for about 48 hours, I believe. So yeah, they offer that, and they offer those on. You don't have to put the money up front. I think it ranges from $20,000 to $60,000, and you can make. I think you can finance that and make payments on it. And as far as public transportation, that's definitely at the state level, and we should be looking to our local communities and our mayors and the governor to see what they're doing about public transportation, because in a city like Chicago, they have a lot of taxpayers, and in Chicago they kind of in a state like Illinois, like Chicago kind of has like a big say in kind of how things are done, taxes or what have you, and the smaller counties are kind of just dragged along and thought about second. So something needs to be taken into consideration for these smaller counties as well as these larger ones. Moving on, community resilience. Communities need greater resources to ensure safety and growth amid rising climate risks. A Green New Deal would help climate-exposed communities build bridges that can withstand floods, restore wetlands that buffer hurricanes, and shield coastlines from sea level rise. Now, unfortunately, I think that it's a good idea, but I don't think that it's very realistic, and I'll tell you why. Is because when Mother Nature shows her face, she's, it's a sight to behold, and she's going to do what she wants to do. So you're not going to be able to build like man-made. I mean, yeah, sure, we can probably build better irrigation systems to kind of route water in flood instances, but we're not going to be able to put money into completely, hurricane proofing. Like the whole town or the whole country. Even though that it's a good idea, but I don't think that we would be able to do that. Moving on, greater racial and economic equity. The disproportionate benefits of a Green New Deal will go to the working class families and communities of color that have endured disproportionate economic and environmental hazards for decades. A Green New Deal must counteract systemic racism and economic exploitation by giving hard-hit communities priority access to new job opportunities, cost savings, pollution cleanup projects, and climate resilience initiatives. Now, I agree that we could do something for people who feel that they've been systemically been victims of racial impropriety. But instead of just handing people things for a new job, it's better to show them how to do it. Kind of like how it says in the Bible, give a man a fish and feed him for a day, and teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. And I think that's a better route of action, or a course of action, I should say, to take to do this, because if you just give somebody a job, they're not going to appreciate it, and they're not real. And to be honest with you, they're just not going to care. What you have to do is create opportunities for these people. And it doesn't matter what your color is. It doesn't matter what your skin is. It doesn't matter, what your race is. What matters is if you are being, if you're being, set aside in a way, because it happens to all kinds of people of color and race. So for anybody, everybody should get an opportunity to a better education. If you look at universities these days, college tuition rates are absolutely through the roof. I think Syracuse is like $70,000 a year. I think U of I, University of Illinois, is like $80,000 a year, which is absolutely unbelievable. And I'm sure you get scholarships, but how much covers all of that money? Some people come out of college and they're $200,000 in debt, and they're just sitting with this debt. So just sending people to college doesn't work either. There has to be like some kind of mentoring like classes or mentoring opportunities for people that have interest in certain things. Like, say, we need carpenters, we need steel workers, we need electricians, kind of finding a way to maybe put more money into education so that they can gauge what people's interests are and kind of give them a better idea of what they can do when they get out of school. Like there's some kind of a test that says, you're more technologically inclined. Maybe you should look into doing something with IT, because you might catch on to it quickly and have a better opportunity of finding a lasting job and having fulfillment in your career. And then there's other people that are like, what, you're very good with your hands and you're very good with building. Maybe you should be a carpenter. They should have programs to help people see these maybe types of opportunities so that they get pushed in the right direction. But it's up on them to actually do the work. And then after they complete the work and complete like their apprenticeship, maybe there's like some kind of an entry level job for them to work their way up. So, this is just me kind of spitballing, my idea on what we could, on what we can do, to help, but just giving isn't the solution. It's more of like a helping out type of a deal. Like, hey, we'll give you this help, to get to help you pay the bills or what have you. But then at a certain point, you need to start moving off on your own. And I honestly think that maybe that could be a step in the right direction, but who knows? Moving on. Infrastructure renewal. We have a major job-creating opportunity to repair, upgrade, and expand our country's neglected roads, bridges, energy grid, and water systems. This is not only a matter of fixing what's broken, it's a chance to build a cleaner, more affordable, and more resilient infrastructure system that supports workers and frontline communities for coming generations. Specific projects in a Green New Deal infrastructure overhaul would include expanding access to light rail and low-emissions public transit, replacing lead pipes once again, building a smart grid for increased wind and solar power, replacing stormwater systems to prevent flooding and toxic runoff, and restoring wetlands and other natural buffers that protect communities. Each project must fulfill high road standards. And you know what? These things should be on the docket already. This shouldn't be part of some kind of a new deal that, a radical, I'm not going to call her radical like she's crazy, but like a radical congresswoman comes out of nowhere and they're trying to fix all of these problems. All of these problems should be on the docket already. And there should be something from the government trying to fix these things, because it's unbelievable, that there's so many problems with, toxic runoff and roads. In Joliet, Illinois, they've got a bridge that's getting ready to freaking collapse, and nobody's done anything about it yet. Moving on. Create family sustaining jobs. Each project should be required to pay workers prevailing wages, hire locally, offer training opportunities, and sign project labor agreements with unions. Yeah, this is another thing that's kind of out there, because we have no idea where the money's going to come from. And this seems to be the running thing of the Green New Deal, is that there's like these really good ideas, but there's no idea where the money's coming from. Tackle pollution and climate change. Priority should be given to projects that build resilience or reduce climate and local pollution, and the materials used should be climate resilient, energy efficient, and produced via clean manufacturing. Here's a possible problem with that. And yeah, it's a great idea in theory, but Brad Pitt's organization, I forgot the name of it. I meant to put it in here, but I forgot about it. I'll look it up and I'll post it on Instagram. But his organization, when Hurricane Katrina hit in New Orleans, he was, kind of doing architecture on the side, and he was designing these homes, these energy efficient, low cost homes for people. And they were great for like a few months, and then people started having problems with them. They were, the quality wasn't as high, and they weren't built very well, and they were coming apart, and they were getting insects and all these other little things. And I think a key problem with doing these energy efficient, low cost homes is that they aren't built correctly. They're not built to last. They're only built because they're cheap and they're energy efficient. That's it. And energy efficiency and being clean doesn't necessarily guarantee sustainment. And I think that could be a big problem with that. Moving on. Level the playing field. Priority should be given to projects that benefit low-income families and communities of color, with community benefit agreements used to ensure support for community-defined priorities. I have no problem with helping people and families and communities of color, but I think that they need to come into the workforce to help the project move. I mean, if they need workers, they should get workers from those local communities, because I think that would probably be the best and most fulfilling for those people. Help communities, not corporations. This infrastructure transformation should be large in scale, driven by public funds and spent on public infrastructure, so that tax dollars support the resilience of communities, not the profit margins of CEOs. Okay, so yeah, in the end, the tax dollars will probably run this thing, because there's always some kind of a loophole or something where people get out of money, and people get out of the responsibility, and it always falls on the taxpayers, like every single time. Moving on. Weatherize America. Here we go. Each time that a homeowner, business, or local government decides to weatherize a building, it supports jobs, slashes energy bills, and cuts climate pollution. A nationwide Green New Deal plan to weatherize buildings from coast to coast would create hundreds of thousands of retrofitting jobs, save families billions of dollars, and move us closer to climate sanity. We could achieve these goals with new national energy efficiency standards for public and private buildings, with public investments to help energy utilities implement the standards, The building weatherization projects enabled by this funding should be required to pay prevailing wages and focus training opportunities in working class communities. New national standards for more energy efficient appliances and industrial processes would create even more high-road jobs in manufacturing and engineering, while further cutting energy cost, toxic emissions, and climate pollution. And we're going to get into climate pollution in a minute. In other words, they want to weatherize everything, and I have no idea how they're going to do that. If you're clueless as to what this is, if you're clueless as to how this is going to go down, this is the whole point. This is the whole point, is that this bill was introduced and there is nothing put forward on how this would actually be implemented. But it's important to know, and it's important to know what they're putting out and what they're trying to do, because it's important to be informed. To know what's going on. So after you hear the podcast and you hear them mention the new Green Deal, you should have a decent understanding of what it is and what they're talking about. Moving on. Buy clean. Each year, the federal government spends billions of tax dollars to buy goods, from steel for bridges to paper for offices. As part of a Green New Deal, a new Buy Clean law would ensure that these government purchases help fuel the transition to a clean energy economy and the creation of good jobs for those who need them most. Buy clean standards would require, for example, that tax dollars be spent on goods manufactured with clean and efficient practices that protect our air, water, and climate. These standards also would require that government contractors pay family-sustaining wages, hire and train local workers, and locate job opportunities in working class communities and communities of color. It all sounds great, but you know what? There's a couple things here. The government should have any say on how you spend your money or where you buy it. Yeah, they are saying federal government, but the contracts should be open to absolutely everybody. And what's going to happen is they're going to go for whoever's charging the least. Moving on. I think that it's incredibly important for us to kind of understand, like the situation of what's going on. There's a lot of problems, and there's a lot of people who talk about the problems, but there's no solutions. Nobody comes out with like, hey, okay, this is the problem. This is what we're going to do to solve it. There's a lot of, hey, this is what it is, and we're going to talk about what it is, and that's it. That's all that we're going to do, and it's just not working anymore. So there's a lot of talk about climate change, and there's a lot of talk about clean air and us reducing our climate footprint. Okay. Now, yes, granted, back in the day, the United States had a very, very big pollution imprint on the world. But since we have done a great job of reducing that, and we're going to continue to be better, because things tend to get better and better every year, you would hope. But I want to talk about the difference between the United States and two other countries. And I want to talk about China, and I want to talk about India, because there's a lot of climate change talk, and there's a lot of talk about us as Americans and pointing the finger on our coal use and our oil use and what we do and how we're killing the planet. And yes, it would be perfect if we can move to a 100% sustainable green initiative, a green solution where we're using solar, we're using wind, we're using water to power the country, and maybe that happens in the future. But if we can reduce what we're doing as of right now and steadily decrease as we have been doing, I think that we're going to be fine. So in China struggles to contain thick whirling shrouds of smog. I'm going to read from this article so that you hear what's going on in China here compared to the United States. China's struggles to contain thick rolling shrouds of smog have been well documented, despite public discontent and countless pledges from the authorities to tackle the problem. Air pollution in many cities has been pushed to over 20 times the safe limit on numerous occasions. Small airborne particles called PM 2.5 can harm the lungs when ingested, with the potential to cause asthma, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. That's how they measure in air pollutants, small airborne pollutant particles. They call them the PM 2.5. The World Health Organization said that anything over 10 micrograms per cubic meter of PM 2.5 should be considered hazardous. China's Ministry of Environmental Protection released a ranking of cities with the worst air pollution, showing the sheer scale of the problem. The cities of, I almost said shitties, the cities of Xingtai, pardon me for not being able to pronounce these Chinese cities correctly. Xingtai, Shizanghuang, and Baoding have a PM 2.5 level of 155.2, 148.5, and 127.9 respectively. Heavy levels of pollution can be primarily attributed to China's use of coal-fired power plants to fuel its economic growth. 7 of its top 10 most polluted cities are located in Hebei province near Beijing, a major industrial center home to the nation's steel industry, as well as heavy glass and cement production. How does the PM 2.5 levels of China, 10 most polluted cities, compare to the worst of the worst in the United States? Here we go. The Washington Post took the top 10 U.S. cities for PM 2.5 and compared them to China's. The results speak for themselves. Bakersfield, California is considered America's worst city for air pollution with a PM 2.5 level of 18.2. That's some distance behind Xingtai's 155.2. Now I'm gonna read that again, okay? In China, they're doing 155.2, and in the worst, absolutely worst, in the United States, we're doing an 18.2. It's unbelievable. I'm going to read these cities. I'm going to read these Chinese cities, and I'm going to compare them to the United States. Top 10 from China, and then the top 10 from the U.S. Xingtai, 155.2. Bakersfield, California, 18.2. Zhanghuang, 148.5. Merced, California, 18.2. Baoding, 127.9. Fresno, 17. Even. Handan, 127.8. Hanford, California, 16.2. Hengshui, 120.6. Los Angeles, 15.3. Tangshan, 114.2. Modesto, 15.2. Jian, 114. Visala, California, 15. All of these cities that I've named in the United States are in California so far. Langfang, 113. Pittsburgh, 18.2. Xi'an, 104.2. El Centro, California, 14. And Zhengzhou, 102.4. Cincinnati, Ohio, 13.8. Excuse me. Now, I lived in California for a few years, and the smog in Los Angeles on a hot summer day was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you could just see I don't know what's going on with me today. I wanted to say you can see the smog in the air, and it was an unbelievable sight. And they're saying that it's only at a 15.3. Could you imagine being in Xingtai at a 155.2? That's absolutely unbelievable. Now I'm going to move on to India. 14 of the world's most polluted 20 cities are in India. And I'm going to read them by the same measure. Number 1, Kanpur, 173. That's almost 20 higher than China's, what was that, Xingtai? Hold on. Yeah, Xingtai. Well, let me hold on. Yeah, Xingtai, 155.2. Faridabad, 172. Varanasi, 151. Gaya, 149. Patna, 144. Delhi, 143. Lucknow, 138. Agra, 131. Muzaffarpur 120, Srinagar 113, Jurgan 113, Jaipur 105, Paitya 101, Jodhpur 98, Boding 93. And we're getting into the Chinese cities now. But those are I'll read the rest of them. Ulaanbaatar 92, Hangshui 87, Xingtai 87. These are Anyang 86, Liaocheng 86. So as you can see, the United States is absolutely nowhere near the climate murderers that you would think that we are. And I think that it's important to understand these statistics because we're not doing all that bad here. We can definitely be better than what we're doing. We could always be better, but we are not as bad as you would think that we are here. What we do need to do is stop polluting and throwing our trash in the world's oceans. That should be one thing that should be done in the United States and absolutely everywhere. Throwing your trash in the lakes, in the oceans is a freaking no-go. And that should be not only in the United States, that should be across the world, not polluting our waters and cleaning up our trash and for the United States government and all of these organizations to start putting the pedal to the metal and pressuring China and India, the top two, it looks like the top two polluters on polluting the world, because they're doing it at record levels. And it's absolutely unbelievable. And the statistics speak for themselves. Well, that's what I got for today, guys. Got a lot for you to think about, and I really appreciate everybody listening to the podcast and supporting it. We're going to be putting out a lot of new information because we want to bring awareness to a lot of these subjects. We want to bring awareness to what's going on and to what's important, and they're going to keep coming. Traditionally, we do interviews, and I'm not gonna do as many interviews as I have been doing, but I'm going to be doing more informative podcasts, and I'm going to be throwing in some book reviews too. I recently read Dan Pronk's book called 70 Kilogram Dickhead. If you don't know Dan, check him out on Instagram at Dan Pronk. DANPRONK, and I'm going to try and get him on the podcast. We've been messaging on Instagram, and I'm going to try and get like a live book read with him to go over his book. He was in the Australian Special Forces, and he had some incredible experiences, and now he helps run a multi-million-dollar a company called TACMed, and I think he's doing really great things, and it was a really great book, and I think everybody will enjoy it. And so I'm going to be throwing book reviews in here, and I'm going to be mixing it up a little bit. And Mike's going to be jumping in and bringing in his copyrighted flair to the whole thing. And on some of them he's not going to be in because we've got a few things that we have going on. Called life, and so he's holding the line at his end, and I'm going to hold the line at my end. So check us out at 57podcast.com. Our podcast is located everywhere, and check out our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're everywhere. And thank you everybody for the support, and be prepared, mitigate your risk. This is Pre out.